I was a woman ready to fight. I was battling for my kids and my husband and my home because I knew that I knew my job. I spent 10 years prior to that studying what FHA stood for. And all I've been doing is helping people build their homes. I'm not here to break people's homes down. I'm a builder. I'm a person that believes in a strong foundation. And my word it's who I am.
That's Lisa Ledezma, and this is the Powerful Ladies Podcast. Hey guys, I'm your host, Cara Duffy, and this is the Powerful Ladies Podcast, where I invite my favorite humans, the awesome, the up to something, and the extraordinary to come and share their story. These are people that inspire me and remind me that everything is possible. I hope that you will be left entertained, inspired, and moved to take action towards living your most powerful life. Lisa Ledezma is your average American woman. She's a divorced mom of 3. She lives in suburbia. She's a soccer coach and has a career as a loan officer. She spent decades working to help the Latino population in her communities have financial literacy, buy a home, and have the American dream. Then one day she was accused of mortgage fraud. On this episode, she shares for the first time her story of being swept up in the financial crisis, how it's impacted her life, and what she's learned as a result. All of that's coming up, but first, we've been getting such great feedback about the I Am a Powerful Lady t-shirt that people have been asking where you can get them. Great news, you can get them at the Powerful Ladies store, thepowerfulladies.com, click shop, and they're on sale right now. We get 15% off if you provide your email address to join our awesome newsletter. And we're also coming out very soon with kids versions and ones for men as well. Who's listening right now that is committed to living a healthier, more fit life? All of you. I thought so. I could hear you all raise your hands as you're listening. Great news. Powerful Ladies has partnered with Primal Kitchen to give you 10% off whatever you order. All of their products tend to be gluten-free, processed-free. They're healthy. They're delicious. They are the foundations, things like avocado mayo, avocado oil, salad dressings, all the things that are going to make your healthy lifestyle taste delicious. It's all in the details. Go to primalkitchen.com, use code PowerfulLadies, and get 10% off every order. You're welcome. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Thank you for coming all the way here on this hurricane of a day.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm excited.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's
so
great.
Let's start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, my name is Lisa Ledezma, and I've been a mortgage lender for about 18 years now, serving the Inland Empire, Riverside County, San Bernardino County. Really dedicated to that area, which is a lower moderate income area of Moreno Valley, Paris, Banning, Beaumont, just really centralized in Riverside itself as a city.
Awesome.
Yeah.
In addition to doing that, you are a mother and an avid soccer player yourself, plus a coach.
Yeah, I used to be. More of an athlete. I wouldn't call myself a soccer player, but I definitely jumped in on that one for a little bit.
Because you were doing gymnastics for a long time, right?
Yeah, really long time. So it started when I was 4, ended when I was probably 21 because I had to quit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You aged out of gymnastics.
Yeah, I definitely aged out. It was a great time.
How did you end up in the mortgage market?
Just truly fell in my lap. I started as a banker and working as a teller and worked my way through positions and opportunities and spent many years going different paths in that industry.
How important is that to you that people have financial literacy and, know what's in a loan and know what's in a mortgage? And like, there's so many more components to it, right? Like, where's your savings at? Are you on a budget? So how important is that stuff to you?
It's my entire life. It's all of our lives. We have a foundation that matters. And it wasn't until I've experienced a lot of different walks in this industry that made me realize that this was never a job for me. This was my career from day one. It was a dream I had when I was 16. Walked into a friend of mine's workplace, and she really wasn't a friend. She was a family member. She worked for her bank, and she invited me over to her house for the weekend. And I went into their office and she says, we'll be right back. Hang out here. Turns out it was a mortgage bank. And I said, one day I was like, I'm going to do something like this. Years later, I found myself doing the exact same thing in a different way, in a different community and area.
I know it's especially as we've been watching what's been going on with the federal workers. And to me, it's so heartbreaking that they aren't able to live without one paycheck. And I don't want anyone to ever feel that way. So it's been an awakening to me to kind of look back at financial literacy and how important it is and what that means to people. And I wish it was something people taught in school more.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm learning now that home ec isn't even something that's important in school anymore. And I'm trying to set off and launch off my Women, Wisdom, and Wealth because I think it's important that women are raising themselves to be educated to be more than just a mom or a wife, but to consider themselves a CFO of their home, except instead of chief financial officer, more like chief female officer of their home to what could be their future spouse, partner as a CEO to their home, and understanding the roles in that. And there's a lot of components to being a chief executive officer, and there's a lot of components to being a chief financial officer. Most people only know that the way of doing that is through college.
Yeah.
But when you are a young mom, you don't have a way to pay for college. There's other avenues that need to come around on how to be a wife, to be trained, how to be a woman, a mother. And the only way of doing that is, just awareness, talking to women along the line and saying, hey, what did you do? And being open to different avenues and different perspectives. And then making the right decision morally for yourself in your own home and not trying to copycat an original.
Yep. And you mentioned your Women, Wisdom, and Wealth program. Can you talk more about that? Like, what is that? What does it look like for somebody who wants to participate?
Women, Wisdom, and Wealth is simply a bunch of courses that I've placed together and trying to start a nonprofit so that we can provide courses for young adults, young mothers coming out of high school, maybe even seniors in high school that are determining, do I get involved in a relationship? Do I go to college? Do I leave my home? Did my mom do it right? Did my dad do it right? Do we even have parents that are doing anything to help our young ladies see how to financially be a good partner to their future partner?
Yep.
So Women, Wisdom, and Wealth is definitely something I'm trying to launch off. And it has been kind of put on the back burner because I've got these projects, and my main project has been being a mom. Yeah. And being an executive to my own home for that matter. Yeah.
And helping young mothers matters so much to you because of your own experience, I'm assuming?
It matters to me because I lived it. Yeah. At the age of 22, I bought my first house. And it was definitely the best way to show my daughter there's no option but to set your foundation very solid. On my website, you'll see, which my website is lisaledezma.com. It's a little bit of a story of how I started my life in the mortgage industry and why it was important for me to own a home, regardless of whether I was married or not. It wasn't about that for me. It was about teaching my kids that regardless of what you're dished, you focus on yourself, you do the right thing, and you set yourself up so that you're not dependent on life and hoping that the world's going to give you something back because you're there.
Yeah. And I think it's a big decision to make when you were 21, 22, when you bought your first house.
I was 22 and I decided I was going to make that move.
Yeah. So you're 22, single mom, and you're like, okay, a house is next. I can do this.
Yeah. There was no other option for me because renting seemed very expensive. Just in general, I'm like, I'm not going to waste money at 22. Yeah. Because I realized the tax benefit that I can get at the end of the year that I can put in towards something. And, by the time I was 24 years old, I received a check that paid for the next 10 years of my life. And I made good decisions with that led to other decisions. And later on, that brings up the topic as to why we're even here, but it wasn't to say it was unsuccessful. It was an experience that brought me down to an experience. Yeah. Changed my life.
Well, and I think that's a great segue because there, we've had a lot of podcasts where we've talked about the woman and what they've achieved and where they're going and kind of what's next. And I thought it was great that you wanted to start with a pretty specific topic and moment in your life that was defining for you. So let's start at the beginning and go through that.
All right. So it was a really interesting day. It was June 18th in 2011. I was landing at the airport in Dulles, Washington. Is that right? I think it's not. I wasn't in Virginia. So it's Dulles, Washington. And I had probably my 7-year-old, my 5-year-old, my 4-year-old, and my 3-year-old. So, and they were coming out of the terminal. I was pulling the car seat out of the luggage terminal when I get a phone call from, at the time, my husband, and he says, "We've got a problem." And I go, "What's the problem?" And he says, "You were in the newspaper today and you were just criminally accused of 3 counts of mortgage fraud." And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, like that.
Right. And I'm carrying a stroller, a car seat and a bag, right? And 3 kids running around at the airport at Dulles. And I was by myself. And he's in California. And I'm freaking out because at this point in my life, I was closing about 100 units a year in properties with clients. And my name is I'm not famous. I'm not popular. I'm just an originator. I help do home loans. And 6 months prior, I had received a little award at the office that I kept my office open that year during a hard crash. And they were thankful that I was an employee there at this bank, because had I not closed what I closed for that branch, they wouldn't have been able to keep their office open. So I was like almost considered a small little employee that did well that year. And the next thing I know, I get hit with an article in the newspaper that said that I was responsible for mortgage fraud. And that was the last thing I ever would have thought I've ever done, because I've repetitively done the same thing in making sure I looked at everything, combed through everything, made sure I didn't put a family in a bad position.
Yeah, because you care about them first. Like you're not.
Yeah, their foundation matters. I could not imagine ever having to pick up my kids and moving out of a home that I just moved into and spent all my money in because I couldn't afford it. And the person who gave me the loan didn't even look at my stuff properly. And she defrauded me in a system that I knew nothing about. So at that very moment when I was getting off of the terminal, I was waiting for my uncle who picked us up, the 3 of the kids and myself. And I remember the feeling of saying, I just got accused of 3 counts of mortgage fraud. And he looked at me, he was like, "What?" And I remember the feeling in the back, they got 3 babies in the backseat of his Suburban, driving in an odd place in Virginia. And I'm like, this can't be real.
Right.
So by the time we got to his house, I go to visit, I'm visiting my family for the summer, and we're going for the week with the kids, and my grandma's there. And so, of course, I'm not trying to be nervous, because I'm looking back at the time we had already, we had opened a real estate company. So we were neck deep with opening a real estate company, an escrow company. I was 26 when I opened my first real estate company with my ex-husband and at the time. And then we decided to merge out of that real estate company and do our own thing. And I was given an opportunity from the same bank that was out of business at this point that I was being accused for of mortgage fraud. They had given me the money to open my real estate company. So when you go back into the history of all this story, you see the issues that the government was going through in this transition of mortgage fraud. And there's a movie about it. I can't even watch the movie because it was just so difficult to live it. I still haven't seen that movie, that mortgage movie that everyone talks about, that talks about the crash and how it was
Oh, yeah. The Big Short. It's really good.
And I couldn't see it because it was just right here. It was in my throat.
Yeah.
And it was a different experience than what everybody talked about.
So there's a lot in there. So I just want to get clarity for the listeners. No. I mean, when it's real and it's coming out, it all starts going. So you and your husband had started your own real estate company, your own mortgage company.
No, it was definitely just an escrow and real estate. It was supposed to be 6 of us.
Yep.
And it blew up in 2008. We decided to.
In a good way?
Great way.
Yeah.
In 2007, everyone told us not to invest in buying anything. No property, no company. And we went the other way and we're like, we're going to do this. We believed in what we had.
Yeah.
And so we invested whatever we had left in our savings account. I got a bonus that year, so I invested it in that, gave it all to the situation. I was a wife. I'm like, it's all ours. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That was in 2008. So we were killing it. It was shortly after the market started crashing. I started working for a company in 2008 that gave us REO accounts so that I can provide those accounts to real estate agents in our office.
And what does that mean?
So real estate owned property accounts. So any foreclosures that were going through the stated income process that foreclosed, maybe loans that were not done right. At that time, I was very comfortable with providing those accounts to real estate agents.
Yep.
Because I was certain that during the stated income loan process, I didn't do neg-am loans. I was very serious about making sure I did fixed loans for my clients.
Yeah.
I was making sure that if somebody wanted an adjustable rate loan, they explained to me why they were investing on an investment property and why they would do an ARM loan, which is an ARM loan is an adjustable rate mortgage loan. And so if you didn't ask me for that, you were getting a fixed rate because you were learning how to invest in a very large property, or you were learning a debt, if you will.
And so everyone has clarity too. The reason that fixed is a smarter choice than an ARM is because fixed, it's the same rate all the time. You know what you're getting. You can plan for it. It's a slower process potentially, or maybe more upfront, but it's consistent. Yeah. Whereas an ARM, the market can change, and there's no rhyme or reason. Suddenly you're going from, I'm making up a number, 7% interest, and tomorrow I have 24%.
Right. It adjusts annually. And so you can't really properly, as maybe a gardener who makes a $30,000 income a year, he's not going to make $50,000 miraculously the following year, but his bills are still going to stay the same. To shock him with a mortgage payment that changes because of the margins it's just not fair. You know, there's a very huge class of people that just are going to make the same fixed income for the rest of their life. Yep. Regardless of factory workers. My family, we came to this country, and I'm the first generation born in my family here in this country. Yeah. And my grandparents and my parents did not make a strong income every month, but we cleared the map on savings. Yeah. We ended up with 7 properties when he passed away.
He being?
My grandfather, blue collar man. Yeah. And hard worker. And, I personally started at that point in 2007, I started following the market and analyzing the market since September 1968, because that's when we first landed here from Cuba. Yeah. And he taught me how important it was to have everything on contract, fixed, organized, in order, because he never knew if he was going to get a raise. Yeah. He just knew that he worked hard, and if he did something right, he may get a little pay raise, maybe 40 cents, but that wasn't going to change. So fixed was something important for him.
And I think that's a great example of people always think that I can have a savings account or an IRA or a house once I make more money. Like you're always chasing, you need more to have those things. And he's a great example of you don't, if you use the budget that you have at your disposal and you're diligent with it, you can have 7 properties. You can have a savings account. You can have other things, but so many people don't want to live within their means. And it's hard.
They want to live above their means.
Yes. And I think there's also, back to your social media comment earlier, there's so many people who you see what everyone else has or looks like they have. So if you compare what you needed to have a standard quality of life even 20 years ago, it's so different. You have to have a laptop, have to have a cell phone, have to have a car, have to have blah, blah, blah. It keeps going. And I've really enjoyed in the past couple of years really reevaluating that and deciding do I need it? Hold on.
Right.
Because I would rather have whatever my version of the 7 properties looks like down the road than the keeping up with the Joneses that gets so crazy when you spin into the social media black hole.
For what it's worth, I had no idea my family even had money. And when you talk to my family, they will never say that we were wealthy or well off. We were hardworking. I remember being a little girl, and my grandfather had the bucket of laundry detergent in the shower. And so whatever fall over water would come into the water, he would use that bucket, go water the plants, right? He would use that as a way of saving money. When I started doing finances and my grandma, who was, really in charge of that, my dad, they started to depend on what I've learned at that point and respectfully asked me to look over their stuff. I'm like, are you guys joking? We have this as a family. And I was very proud as a minority, as a Hispanic. I was proud as a young daughter. I was the first daughter in my family. They're in this country because my grandma and grandpa only had 2 kids. So there was a lot that we weren't taught that we figured out because of the mistakes that we made from our generations. So, I was very sure of myself till I got that letter or that phone call that I wasn't too sure of myself all of a sudden. And I'm like, wait, I didn't do anything wrong. Of course, everyone always says I'm innocent. But I had to come to a very big accountability of myself and say, could I have done something wrong?
Yeah. Whether you knew it or not.
Whether I knew it or not, because everybody kept saying the feds do not make a mistake. Lisa, if you're getting accused of mortgage fraud, you better find yourself a good attorney. And I'm like, who's getting sued here? So when I read the article, and we can pull it up. You can Google my name. The article strictly says, that, this mom and pop shop, real estate company, and it specifically had my name on there, and it was real. It was like a real struggle. I was accused of something that I wasn't sure I did or didn't do. So it was, like I said, it's June. Kids just got out of school. Well, one of them did. And we're on vacation, and my hands are tied. My hands are super tied. None of that made sense to me. It actually looks back, and I'm like, I feel like it was a dream, but it wasn't a nightmare. It was just, am I really going through this?
Yeah.
What are you guys talking about? That was at like 2:00 in the afternoon on the East Coast. So the article had came out that morning from the Press Enterprise or the Valley Times in my area. And like wildfire, all of the people that used to believe in me started not talking to me.
That same day or like?
That same moment. All of a sudden, I'm working for a new company that I was merging with. I stayed with the same group of people for 7 years. Because of the mortgage switch, I went from, at the time I was, and I guess I could probably just tell the story.
Yeah, sure.
So in 2007, the first mortgage crash happened. I was with a company by the name of American Home Mortgage. And it was July around that time in 2007. And we get a phone call saying, we are no longer going to be funding loans tomorrow. Pick up your stuff and close your office. We're moving out. So I'm just an employee doing mortgage loans, right? I'm just like a mom.
Yeah.
And I do mortgage loans. You visit me, you apply for a loan, you're done, right? But and so you move on. So I get a phone call one day and they said, hey, we're moving to a company called IndyMac Bank. And I was like, okay, this is a group of people. And it was my manager at the time. He says, will you stay with us if we give you a sign-on bonus? And I'm like, sure.
Right.
Yeah. What's the sign-on bonus? Which was the money that provided for me to be able to help start my new company. And so I'm 26 years old. I'm a mom of 3. I just had my baby girl, my last one, who's 11 now.
Yep. And
like I said, we just started killing it, working hard and doing right for families. And primarily my business at the time was about 89 to 94% Hispanic families and really showing them to start saving money and doing it the way I had best done it through many clients, And so I had a repetitive way of doing business. And in 2008, we were doing great. My company at the time said, hey, Lisa, we're going to give you some REO accounts. Provide those to your agents to help get the revenue back. And so I got 6 accounts. And I was very excited to give those to my friends, my colleagues, my coworkers, and hardworking real estate agents that really wanted to utilize those foreclosures, do CMRs on them, do, market analysis on them, and then help the banks put them back on the market to sell back to the consumers and back to the industry.
Because nobody wants abandoned houses in their market.
Correct.
It hurts everybody.
Right. So, and going in 2008, I'm working great. I'm with IndyMac Bank. I spent that whole year at IndyMac Bank doing what I do best, working hard and giving out loans. Well, in 2008, June of 2008, we were only there a year. We get a call again that IndyMac Bank's closing their doors. So we're like, okay, now what are we going to do? And they're like, well, we're merging with another bank. And at the time, that bank was called Metro Cities Mortgage, and they were primarily a wholesale company.
Okay.
So what that means is they pretty much did subprime deals at the time, and B paper, C paper clients, low income, bad credit, you call it now. Now they're calling it like, and I forgot the name, but they're coming back to it now in this market 10 years later. But at that time, you know,
a D-level loan or something?
like pretty much, you know, subprime. And so I was just like going with the flow at that time. What happened was, to isolate the area, what they were suing me for were 3 different situations. And in 2008, I provided 3 types of loans out of that year, 108 loans that I did loans for different people, right? So 108 units. That year, while I was with IndyMac, 3 of those loans did not make it the full year of full 12 months payments.
Okay.
So the guideline at the time was that if you were going to move out of your property, which is what people were doing, they were selling their homes or they were using the rental income to qualify to buy new property. And they were Fannie Mae at that time had made a guideline that stated that you had to have 30% equity in your departing home to be able to use the rental income to qualify for the new property that you were going to purchase. So it was a good time for people to maybe buy a cheaper home if they had a higher mortgage, or maybe upgrade and buy the same type of home for half the price. And so it was a good time for people to learn how to be investors. They really were trying to buy a second home and invest in the first home they bought from the stated income loan. Again, no awareness, no education, no knowledge of what to do in the real estate industry. It was like handing a kid car keys. No preparation. And those 3 loans legitimately those 3 homes foreclosed. So we can go back to fast forward a little bit. To tell you the story, I get that phone call, and it's now 4:00 in the afternoon, and I get a phone call from Metro Cities, who is now the new company I merged with. 3 years later, we all merged together. I get a phone call from my boss at the time. He's like, hey, we need to talk. And I go, okay, who's on the line? He goes, HR. They want to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? They're like, we regret to inform you that you're fired. This is like 4 hours I get out of the terminal. I'm like, what do you mean I'm fired? They're like, yeah, we have to let you go because of this article in the paper that says that you are going to be criminally indicted for mortgage fraud. And I'm like, I couldn't breathe. And I'm looking at my aunt and my uncle, and they're like, what did you do wrong? And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm on the phone with my husband. I'm crying. I'm falling apart. I'm like, what are we going to do? And he's like, we're going to get through it. Like, we're legitimately getting sued for $3 million, up to $3 million, because it's up to $1 million per unit or per transaction. We don't have $3 million. Right. I mean, we're a family of 5, 6, and we got 3 kids, and we are just starting as a young couple, building our home, and we're doing it. We have our company. And we just see that somebody—
You thought you were living the American dream.
We all of a sudden think we're working hard. We're not defrauding anybody. We're not being dishonest. But all of a sudden, like a wildfire, I went from, and within 8 hours, being one of the best loan officers out there. Everyone knew I was clean. I was legitimate. I was solid. To now all of a sudden the article started saying, oh, we knew she was fraudulent. She's going to be painting her nails in jail. Like, people that were my friends, like, hurtful. I mean, just hurtful things. And I'm like, did I do this? Did I literally do this? And there was a strange feeling of anger. I had to scramble to start a new email because I had to get I had loans in the system. I had clients that were depending to close on me that now my company was going to take back because it belonged to my company at Prospect, which is the company I'm currently at in 2011. And I call my manager. I'm like, why would you fire me? I thought you had me. He goes, Lisa, I had no idea they were going to do that to you. Mind you, I'm just landing on vacation in Virginia.
So your head's in a crazy space. So if you did 108 units and 3 didn't work.
In 2008.
So this
mind you, this was they were suing me 3 years later for
3 years later.
Yeah.
So is it I don't know the statistics of how loans work. So, but I would assume similar to other businesses, if you do 100 things and 3 don't work, that's kind of like under the radar of things that don't work.
They weren't coming after me. They were going after huge fish.
Yeah.
There were people out there that were taking money from elderly people that were losing their homes, buying checks, pretending to make their mortgage, and then sell the home from underneath them and make killings.
Yeah.
I had probably made out of those 3 loans, I probably made an accumulation of maybe only $8,000 in commission between the 3 mortgages.
Right. So
which is nothing.
Yeah. You're like,
it's
why
nothing.
would I commit a fraud for $8,000
Right.
in the event I was going to?
3,000 max, my commission bracket, and I was under an umbrella, you know, and I have to correct myself. I keep saying 2011 and I apologize, but it really was the first year that they officially, you know, came out with us having to have a license. And then what's now called the NMLS, the National Mortgage Lending License. Like you have to have a DBO license to perform mortgages and to have,
which is good, right? Because it's helping clean a lot of that stuff up.
It cleaned out a lot of people that were doing those negative loans, that were doing this as a job. I wasn't doing it as a job. I was doing it as a career to help people. I've said this whole thing in 2011, but 2011 was when I was actually acquitted from the whole stress. So I think that that's where I'm getting my years mixed up. But I got my license the same month that I was also being accused of mortgage fraud. And I wasn't going to lie to the government. I was I'm in. We're going to be very transparent. If I still can get my license, I'm going to tell the truth because I knew I was innocent. I knew I had done the right thing.
Yeah.
When I got that letter in the mail, it occurred to me, or the article in the mail, it occurred to me that I had been almost cheated. I got summons from a assistant district attorney to come into a courthouse or I guess they wanted to speak to me about something and they never told me what. It was a deposition. I was there for 6 hours a month prior to that article.
So you have 2008, you do the 108 units, 3 of them don't work out. It's now 2010. They call you in
for a subpoena.
For a subpoena, which is that common? Like, was that weird to you?
I didn't know what I was there for.
Yeah, but they didn't say it was a subpoena. They just said, "Hey, can you come down?"
You have to. Chat? No, they gave me a subpoena. They said you got to come down. I thought I was there because of something I did with my kids, or like I didn't know.
Right, you're like,
I was like maybe like somebody's suing me.
Right,
but I'm honest. I was there 5 hours with the assistant district attorney's office, and there was a mediator in the corner, and she's typing away, and I'm just like. My deposition was 6 hours, 115 pages. I didn't know what I was there for. So he invites me over.
Yeah.
And we're just going to say his name's Frank.
Sure.
Right? Frank and AK, that's not his real name. That assistant district attorney. And he's just so friendly.
Yeah.
Asking me all these strange questions. And then all of a sudden he's like, come back after lunch. So I'm excited having lunch in LA and looking around down here in downtown LA and come back at lunch, and he starts showing me a whole bunch of applications. And is this your signature? Is this you? Did you do this? And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. All of a sudden, I had this choke in my throat.
Right.
And I know these clients personally. One of them is a family member. Another one was a friend of mine's client. And another one was a chick in our office, their client. So all 3 of these files were very different files.
Yeah.
And so... I looked at him and I'm like, yes, that's mine. No, that's not my signature. Like, I'm going through this investigation. I walk away, I go home, and I'm like, they were auditing these 3 files. I tell the story. So my surprise wasn't a full surprise when I see the article in the paper. Because now all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, it made sense.
It all made sense. So now I'm like, okay, we got to get an attorney. At that time, because we were being sued through the company, they were trying to say, well, we're going to sue your whole real estate office. And now I'm pretty much on my own and I get fired. And a coworker tells them that tells EDD that I was fired for mortgage fraud. So now I don't even qualify for unemployment. And so now we have a debt in our home. We have kids to feed. I have to get my my mortgage loan officer license. I don't even know if I can qualify for that. And I'm primarily a very big, vast majority of the breadwinner in my home.
Well, and what's striking to me is we hear so many stories through the Me Too movement, through different inappropriate behavior of people who are high profile. And we're definitely in a period now, years later from your experience, where if you were accused, you're guilty.
Right.
And we also talk a lot about the discrepancy between like what race you are and how likely you are just to be accused and blamed right away and what happens to that. And so I think this is a really interesting story in the sense that you are an average working mom and wife.
And a soccer coach.
Right.
I've been coaching for 20 years. Like, I'm clean. All of a sudden I went from wearing a pretty little white dress to stripes.
Yeah.
Accusing me of hurting families that were my family, my friends, and things that I was blinded to. And finally I was just like, and it was in the month of that summer, you know, and you realize I come back into town, right? Like, I'm going through the week. I got fired, and I'm like, we're just going to keep moving forward. Yeah. Come back into town, and in my own office, nobody would look at me. You know, it was just broken. And I'm like, wow.
Was the company allowed to fire you for being accused of something?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea at the time. And I still will never know. They didn't want anybody coming around and snooping through their, you know, the company I was working for at the time probably didn't want the feds to go looking through their stuff. For all I know, I have no idea. I was just... okay, move on to another company. And so, you know, I applied for unemployment, and at the time I'm just like, we're going to keep on making it afloat. I applied for my license. I studied as if I had not been accused of anything. And I'm going to get my license come hell or high water. I'm going to keep doing loans because I knew that I was good at what I did. Yeah. And people can count and trust me with their transparency and their homes and their finances. This is in my head at the time. I was confident.
Yeah. From when the article came out, how long was it before there was anyone like actually served you papers about being indicted or about being accused?
6 months. So that agony was long.
Yeah, because you never knew it was actually going to happen. It was just
an article. Yeah, an article that were stories. And in the article, I don't know if you want to pull it up. It's if you Google my name and you look that up, you'll see that the article is really about other people defrauding Wells Fargo, was being accused of mortgage fraud, and they were looking for big people, big numbers. And so I was just a mom and pop shop in a little tiny city with 3 little mortgage loans, and I was really losing my whole world. And in just the summer of 2010, I lost my job. I couldn't afford my car. I went 3 months. I remember I didn't have money to buy lunch money for my kids for food to get them to start school that September. You know, like, I didn't know what to do, but we just kept doing loans and real estate, and I was just going to keep on going. And it wasn't until November 2010, you know, my husband at the time says, we're really getting sued. Hey, and nobody wants to help us, Lisa. We need to get an attorney. And at that point, I started looking into guidelines, and I said, I am not guilty for this. I was under an umbrella when those mortgages were done. I followed every guideline, and I made sure that there were appraisals for every home that we did if we used income for them. But they wouldn't let me see anything.
Who's they?
The attorney that was suing me, the district attorney of they wouldn't let me see anything. It was all blind. Yeah, you're accused. Pay up, or we're gonna take you to jail. Pretty much. So come February 2011, I get a phone call from the broker of our office at the time, and he says, we need to settle. And I'm like, don't settle. We're not settling. I'm not settling. I think I've looked this through. Yeah. We are not going to settle because I'm the owner of this company too. We put in the money. My husband wasn't the broker. So I look at Richard and I said, we're not settling. Please don't settle. He says, the broker wants to settle. Well, the broker settled and booked it. So Richard and I at that time, Richard had to get his broker's license because we had 67 agents working under us. These are 67 families that depended on this company to do well. Yeah. So I believe we made a decision as a company that was left with 3 owners, myself as his wife. And he went against my decision and decided to settle. And whatever the company settled for, I found to be guilty. And I said, do not settle because we're not guilty. And at that point, once I realized I got some information and we got attorneys, we went through 3 attorneys that would not go up against the feds. They're like, not a chance. It's going to cost you $60,000 to $70,000 to prove your innocence. Now, mind you, the article wasn't even really about us, but somebody isolated it down to that big of a situation that I was like, I'm fighting it. I don't care. I'm fighting it.
Did you fight it individually or did you guys fight it as a group?
They, as a company,
because the company was accused, right?
The company was accused, right? And at that point, when we all started combing through, they released a lot of the names that were in this situation within our company. Truth be told, they were trying to take blood from a turnip. They didn't know. They just saw a couple of our taxes for a couple years prior to, and we were an up and coming new company, new business. So they saw that we made $1 million, but that wasn't what we really made. It was 3 partners in the real estate office doing REOs, selling real estate, just new business. And there was one loan officer who was working as an in-house loan officer, happens to be the wife of the new broker. And I'm like, it wasn't me. But it was me.
Well, it was you in the sense that you were the wife.
In-house lender, and I was the wife. So now I'm the reputation. I'm all this. I'm the spotlight. And I was adamant. I'm not gonna back down because I know what I did and I didn't do.
So did you guys go to court?
No. Never heard anything about it till about March of 2011. I get a phone call and they said, Lisa, you by yourself, you are actually going criminal. And I go, what?
So it just keeps getting worse.
It just keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
But then I realized since the company that we had at the time was called Beechwood Realty, since they decided as the 3 of them as investors to settle and say, hey, we'll just settle with you against my opinion. And as his wife, I said, maybe that's giving up, like you're just admitting fault. But for him, it was easier than
going through the entire
thing. So I respect him for doing that. He didn't want to put his family through it. But the truth be told, I was adamant about not quitting something because I had something to believe in. I had truly my name that maybe it sounds selfish, but I know that I wasn't putting families in bad positions at that moment in my life. So there was still this was still in the clouds. There's no real evidence that I was at fault for this.
So how did it jump from being the company that was being sued and you were part of the accused parties to suddenly you as an individual were charged criminally?
Because I wouldn't settle. So
everyone else settled except you. They separated you out.
They separated me out. And then I get a phone call that says, well, then we just finally approved that you get to, they're going to take you down as criminal. Prior to now at this point, that was probably the best thing they can do because remind you, I have no more money. Lost my job. I had my car repossessed. I couldn't get unemployment. I couldn't feed my kids. And I'm barely holding on to what I had left. And 3 months later, I did have a company believe in me, let me start doing loans again. And I got my license as a lender. And I'm doing business again, finally solid. And I'm fighting through this. And the criminal attorney gives me a call and says, I need to meet with you down in LA. They gave me a public defender. And at that point, I'm going to be really honest and transparent. I got down on my knees and I just said, if I did it, give me my punishment. Because if I put 3 families through grief and they lost their home because I overlooked what maybe an assistant had did, my name was on the paperwork, I'm going to own up to it. But I need to see it. So I came in to LA that day. The gentleman who saw my case, who was a criminal public defender, he says, I want to know your story. So just like today, I told my story. I brought the guidelines. I showed each application, and I showed that I followed guidelines for the banks, under the bank's umbrella. And the rules at the time in 2008, what they were requiring us to do in order for us to give the buyer a new loan at that time. And luckily, great memory served me purposeful because he sat back in his seat and he goes, that district attorney, that assistant district attorney, he literally is, this is almost like a coup, Lisa. all the depositions were not making sense. He almost, as a husband and wife, one was accusing me and the other one was being honest. But I really think they put that couple up against a corner when they were doing their deposition. Mm-hmm. And the husband would say, well, no, Lisa didn't tell us that we needed to buy a house. She was actually very transparent. And, I feel for the couples that were being sued, because I think that what really happened is that,
the couples that bought the house were being sued because they foreclosed on them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what really happened was, and I'm just going to give you one isolated incident. And one specific couple came to me. They wanted to buy a house. And I remember this family very well. They wanted to upgrade. Mm-hmm. And they came to me and said, we want to buy a 2-story home in the same neighborhood, or not the same neighborhood, but a genuine area. They wanted to upgrade from their smaller home to a bigger home in a nicer area. Yeah. And it was half the price. Mm-hmm. So telling you the story now, I was like, well, duh.
Right.
But that wasn't the case in that market at the time. So I helped them finance a home. They told me that their mom they needed a home that had a bedroom downstairs because the mom was living with them. Mm-hmm. And they wrote a letter saying, we're buying this home because we need a house that has a single story so mom can come live on the bottom bedroom.
Yeah.
So I made them write a letter indicating that and signing it saying, you're not going to lose your other house, right? You are legally signing that you can uphold 2 mortgages. Yes or no. Mm-hmm. And they are responsible for that. We're in a state where if you sign a contract, you're responsible to pay back that note. Mm-hmm. If I borrow the money, I got to find a way to pay you back that money. Whether it takes me 5 years or 30 years, I'm in debt to you. Mm-hmm. Well, what ended up happening is they never moved into that new home. They stayed in the home that they said they were going to move out of. And they spent time fixing up the new home. What they were doing is they got a new FHA loan, which is low down payment home. And they were trying to be investors, uneducated. Mm-hmm. And that almost took my whole family down because they were not educated. They had no awareness. Mm-hmm. And then they turned around, and when they foreclosed on their new home, because the mortgage insurance came to their door kind of, and they said, hey, why did you foreclose? And because they foreclosed, they wanted their money back. HUD's like, you're going to pay me back our money. You shouldn't have bought this home. Mm-hmm. Guess what? Your note's due. Well, of course, the husband and wife's going to say, well, our lender said we can qualify. Boom. Mm-hmm. Completely took responsibility off their own hands, and they were looking for someone to blame. They blamed Lisa. Yeah. When they originally came to me saying, we want your help.
And as soon as the attorney that was appointed to you saw the paper stream, and he's like, what's going on?
This is a joke. Yeah. He goes, Lisa, you did not try to put a gun to this head and try to make commission on this. You were helping these people buy a home. Mm-hmm. So this isolated incident, like I said, that couple specifically, the wife was lying on the deposition. Mm-hmm. The husband was being honest, but the wife was like, we're not going to pay that mortgage back. The husband's like, you can see the holes in the deposition. Mm-hmm. You could see where he was trying to not necessarily put it on me. Yeah. But the wife wasn't going to put it on them.
So you meet with the attorney. He realizes that this is BS. Yeah. And then what happens?
So again, we're now about 9 months later, right? Into this whole accusation. And he brings up the case because now this attorney is the first attorney. This public defender is the first attorney that closed the doors, showed me all the evidence that was up against me, not even the company. And he says, do you know what you're being sued for? And I said, no. He shows me those files again. And we revisit a year later that deposition. We revisit each file. One file was a family member who legitimately had been working 10 months and got fired during that market because now the market crashes. He was a construction worker and he was a family member. I knew. And he just couldn't afford his mortgages, both mortgages.
Right, which could have happened to anybody.
Mm-hmm. So, but in their eyes, I was making him buy that second home. They were pointing it out that I made him buy that second home. And
how would they know that?
Well, because I'm just going to say it was my ex-brother-in-law. He legitimately was in a small home he had bought at a good time years prior, outgrew the home. Grandkids were coming, and it was in a really low, moderate income family home. For sake of, I can't even use this word, but it was in a bad area. Yeah. And some gangsters came into his house, beat his family up, And from one night to another, he's like, we got to move out.
Which any logical person would probably say.
My sister-in-law does loans. Let's get a house through her. We get him into a mortgage. Now he has 2 mortgages. But 10 months later, with the crash, he can't do construction. So he doesn't have an income anymore. So he stopped making his mortgage payments before the year was up. So his mortgage, he did foreclose. I probably could have maybe spent more time with him after he bought a second home to teach him how to maybe escape that second home and rent it out too.
But that's not even the responsibility of somebody.
That's not my responsibility. But
and I know that you're putting your own, because
there's a lot I could have done.
Well, yes, but there's also there's in hindsight, there's always things that show up, and if it wasn't legally required, then there shouldn't be a lawsuit.
Well, I mean, that isolated incident, that was my loan. I took care of that loan. So when I met with the public defender, I told him, I said, that was my file. And I know what I did. I did everything per guideline. Right or wrong, it doesn't matter.
Right.
I did everything per guideline, what the bank expected of me as their employee. Did not defraud the system. I checked my work. There was nothing fraudulent in that transaction.
Right.
So what really I think the district attorney was looking for in me was the other 2 files. Going back to that husband and wife situation where they never really moved their mother-in-law into the house.
Yeah.
That guy was slick. He would see me at the softball fields and talk to me. Oh, we haven't moved in yet. And I'm thinking, you have to move in. You signed a contract and FHA requires that you move in. That's an owner-occupied home. I would tell him this. Those 6 months that I was in like limbo, what was really going on, I would see him throughout the city. And it struck me odd that he would find me, and he never told me that he had did a deposition. He would walk.
It's almost like he was talking to you because he had that guilty conscience that he knew he had done something.
It was weird. And so I'm now with the district attorney. I'm now with this public defender, and now I'm angry.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been angry from the first phone call.
I was just like, we're fighting this. And he's like, slow down, Turbo. I know where you want to go with this, but you have to understand this is a very sensitive case. The third case in question at the time, it was a coworker of ours who was no longer working at our office anymore. He had got let go. He did do fraud. He came in with fake pay stubs, fake W-2s. And I mean, for what it was worth, I wasn't a detective.
Right. How would you know?
His son was the owner of the company. We had a real verification of employments. We had real pay stubs. Everything matched. W-2, everything was right. Turns out they foreclosed within the first year. And when the district attorney was looking into suing me, he thought I was in on that scam. Again, my name was on the application as the originator. So sure. But we're still looking at a $3,000 possible commission, and you want to sue me for $1 million of mortgage fraud? Really? Like, do you not care about the fact that I am bleeding on the ground?
I don't think they do.
They don't care. Right. So this whole time, I mean, I'm being stubborn, and at the time, Richard's like, why don't you just give up? I said, I can't.
Well, I mean, I don't think I could either in situations because there's an element of justice that is so strong for me internally.
I was a woman ready to fight.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I was battling for my kids and my husband and my home.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I knew my job. I spent 10 years prior to that studying what FHA stood for.
Well, and when you've worked so hard to create a career on your own, that you've done it all yourself, that you've gone through this whole process, and in that type of industry, your name is so important. Like, I mean,
that's all I have.
It is in every industry, but I think it's different when your name is what's paying
my bills.
Right. And people are coming in. It's different when I can do work underneath, whatever corporation I work for. But it's much more direct to the individual customers that you have. Right.
And so, I went in May 16th, 2011. It was the day that I got a phone call after meeting with that public defender. And he says, so the judge decided that we are going to go criminal on you. And I was scared. I was super scared. I mean, like, I just remember going on my couch and I just told my husband, I'm like, I got to go to jail, I think. I just fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I was ready to go to jail. I was ready. If I did it, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
Give me my time.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time, Richard goes, if it were me, I would go to jail for you. And I'm like, but you can't. So don't tell me that you would go do something for me that you can't do. I'm not going to see my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And all I've been doing is helping people build their homes. I'm not here to break people's homes down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a builder. I'm a person that believes in a strong foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And my word is, it's who I am. I've always considered being a person, and my goal was to be a woman of valor, honest, transparent. And that is hard. That's very hard when you got 3 kids and you got to do all these things. And that sounds funny to say it's hard and it should be easy, but you're dealing with different families. And I wasn't a liar. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a manipulator. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sneaky, but I was creative. Mm-hmm. And that's what gave me my name, is that I was a creative finance advisor.
But that's what you want someone to be. It's like someone who does well on the stock market. Like when any system has a set of rules, it's all about being creative within the rules that you're given. I think it's just the human nature, right? If you're told you have to stay in this box, half the group is going to be like, what do you mean by have to? And can we define this box, please? It's just nature, because people don't want to do what they're told to do. And then it just goes from there. But being creative is a resource for people.
Right. And being creative means that in a form, you do have to understand what manipulation looks like. You have to be able to, you don't have to lie.
No.
You do have to use knowledge and wisdom. Mm-hmm. I knew that for years before, I was reading and studying what the bank's rules were so that I wasn't giving bad information.
Yeah, because you're doing your job well.
I mattered, and I didn't want to mislead my clients in any way. So when I sat with that district attorney again, I said, are you going to drop this from being a criminal case? And he says, no. I'm like, you've taken everything from me. Mm-hmm. So at this point now, I'm starting to feel guilty.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, all the evidence is against me. Why not just go with them, right? But something in the back of my throat said, no, don't quit on this. So a couple days later, that public defender gave me a call and says, I'm going to meet with the judge personally, see why they got away with making this go criminally. Mm-hmm. What does he have?
Right, that you guys don't have access to yet.
Why are we going civil? Mm-hmm. Why are we going civil? Why are we going criminally? Is Lisa really a criminal?
Right.
And so I truly believe that, by the grace of God, this man fell in my lap. This public defender fell in my lap. And he wanted to hear my story. He wanted to hear the truth. Mm-hmm. And I told him the truth. I showed him guidelines. I was thankful for everything I had studied, I had learned. I had spent time working really hard to remember, and I didn't forget. Mm-hmm. I knew every file I did. Mm-hmm. I knew that I wasn't going to mislead families. Mm-hmm. I was confident on that in itself.
Yeah.
So he says, what do you want to do? I said, I want to fight it. He goes, I'll fight this for you criminally, and you're going to be just fine, but that doesn't mean the civil case goes away for you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
Let's one step at a time. Mm-hmm. I was sitting at my grandma's house one day. My grandma was in an assisted living house. She still lives there. She's my mom, the woman in my life, my inspiration, and she suffers from dementia. And I'm sitting there painting her nails, and he gives me a call and he goes, "How you doing today?" And I'm like, "I'm good." I wish I could tell you this public defender's name.
Yeah,
couldn't find him after this phone call was the last phone call I had, and he says, "You can breathe." The judge agreed with me. I put everything you said in one letter, and within 30 minutes, he says, she's not the one. I said, are you kidding? 9-10 months of feeling like I'm supposed to go to jail. I mean, I had a friend of mine who was down at the Harupa Valley Police Department. I go, please pick me up. Can we make this as quiet? I don't want a bunch of cops knocking down my door in front of my kids and getting arrested in front of my kids. Like, I was legitimately afraid.
Yeah.
And embarrassed. And people were talking about me. My neighbors were like, she's going to go to jail. Like people that called themselves my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, thank you for all this happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because I got to see who I washed away as colleagues,
right,
as friends, as true coworkers that
mm-hmm.
believed in me.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out you really didn't even know me.
Right.
Because I would have never done anything to hurt a family at all.
Right. Like if someone had called up yesterday and made that accusation of you, and I'd be like, that didn't happen. Come on.
There's no way. I know Lisa. That's like someone telling Lisa right now that she doesn't care about her 3 kids.
Right.
Someone would be like, you don't know her.
Yeah.
She would probably smack you for saying that.
Yeah.
Her kids matter. Like my kids' life, my family's lives, my life, my friends' life, people I associate myself with, they matter because people matter. We're here to love each other.
Yeah.
I'm not walking one path and doing something different on the other side. I am authentic. I am who I am. I know who I am. I am not trying to go away from that at all at this point in my life. You know?
100%. And so the lawyer calls you, says you're cleared of everything. Was that criminal and civil?
Nope, just criminal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got that off of your plate, which is like, I'm sure a huge relief.
Oh gosh, I felt like, and the first thing that comes to my mind is all of a sudden my wings opened up very largely. And
that's how you felt.
I was like, oh, we're on. We're going on. Who wants to go in the ring with me? I wasn't lying.
Yeah.
I wasn't guilty. And I had no money. When we had just settled civilly, we're buying myself into more debt.
So did you go to court for the civil portion?
No. That was the last day I saw.
So it all got dropped?
No. So prior to that, he says, what have you done in the last 6 months? I said, well, since they had advised me to do a community service, I had started working at Riverside has a volunteer service. You can do 211. So every Friday for I don't know, I was going for months. I'd go every Friday and volunteer. And I was having a great time. I was working for an organization that the city has, which is 211, where the homeless people can go. And I was volunteering community service hours because in the event that I was going to go to court, I can say to the judge, look, if I was guilty and I did do something wrong, here's my due diligence. I've done community service. I was taking advice from all the attorneys that we had so happily said we were going to get slaughtered by. And, but 211 was the best thing that ever happened to me because I was serving the community in a different way that I didn't even know how many families really were in need in the city.
Yeah.
And it was a great program. So when he says, what have you been doing? I said, well, and this is at the meeting with the district attorney, the assistant district attorney's office. Remind you, he's a new young district attorney learning his way.
Yeah.
And he was just hired to audit these files. It was his sole job. So now what I'm up against with him on the other side of the table is I'm going to go after you. I'm going to tell your boss what you did. And you literally poked at a rock that had no blood. You didn't even consider my family when you were coming at me civilly. And you didn't care to listen to me. He goes, can I be honest with you, Lisa? And I go,
that's
please.
why we're here.
He goes, I really like you. He goes, and it took days for me to put your deposition together because I knew that it wasn't you, but I needed somebody. I'm like, what?
I would have jumped across the table and tackled him. Well, and to be validated by the person that's accusing you that you are innocent, even secretly, if no one else heard it, it like you're saying, it reinvigorates your passion for not accepting what they're giving you.
Yeah. And because had he not gone criminal for me, I wouldn't have got that guy who believed in me. Nobody else believed in me. My community didn't believe in me. My boss didn't believe in me. My mentor didn't know what was going on. Yeah. My friends stopped talking to me.
When you're in that moment, like, what did you do? What did you do for yourself to not lose your sanity and to keep grounded while that was going on?
Didn't give up on faith.
Yeah.
That moment that I gave up to serenity, the moment I gave up the pride. I humbled myself and the scene is, and to give you a little better scene is, I dropped down to my knees in my closet and I said, if I did this, give me ownership. The civil case brought out a lot of depositions started coming out. A lot of these people, the real estate agents on those isolated files, they started being more honest. That's what saved me.
How did this moment wrap up for you?
I pulled out all the evidence that I had, and I said, "This is what I'm going to pull out of court." Right? It was probably a piece of paper and a pencil. And
because you were representing yourself,
right? I'm going to be my own federal attorney. And I'm like, he goes, 20 hours of community service, something silly like that. And I'm like, no. And he goes, I'll let you use your coaching hours as volunteer hours. Just sign the paperwork and send them to me every month. And I said, I'll think about it. Closed up my files, picked up all the appraisals, picked up all those old applications, all the evidence I had gathered in 9 months of trying to be real. He calls me 3 weeks later. Did you make a decision? After the pressure, after being tired, after fighting, after running a really long race, I said, I'll do 20 hours, but I want a pardon letter from HUD. He goes, why? I said, go on the internet and you type up my name. The first thing on the internet is my federal inconsistency of being a good person. I had clients calling me and saying, why would I work with you? Because you do mortgage fraud. I'm like, this is my way of living. Like, this is how I pay my bills.
So you gave him 20 hours, which you'd already done.
Yeah.
And then did he give you the letter?
I got it eventually.
Yeah.
Never saw him again.
You know, I love that this conversation has gotten into so many areas between what happens in criminal and civil cases and how not honest they can be and how prejudiced they can be and how it really isn't always a innocent until proven guilty world. It's quite the opposite. It's talked about how much, like, the whole regulations, like why we need them and how they actually help the people who are doing things the right way most of the time. There's also ones that are weird and seem unnecessary sometimes, but like people don't pay a lot of attention of how money is handled in this country. They're definitely not paying attention most of the time for our own money, which I ask everyone listening to do more of. And we're offering tools on that, on Powerful Ladies about that. So check out some basics there. But then also like paying attention to local, state, federal laws and processes about how you as a consumer need to be protected, because unfortunately we can't rely on people. Like, everyone's not the good loan officer.
No. You know, I you know what I did differently? From that closing out, what I did differently was make sure that I always kept my word. I didn't not keep my word before.
Right.
It
became more of a priority.
It became more of a priority of making sure that if you sat down with me, we were going to not have a conversation for 5 minutes about you buying a house. You were going to sit with me for an hour. And we were going to have a honest, vulnerable, transparent, let's get all naked in the room today, guys, because I understand that you want to buy a home, but how prepared are you really?
Yep.
And so what I did to change my life was I made sure I gave better awareness. Today, I'm a big advocate of I'm a big advocate of home buying education.
Yep.
I'm a big advocate. I teach classes now. I'm a continuing education real estate instructor.
There's pride in being able to own your own home and take care of it and to take care of your family and to have your finances organized in a way that allows them to work for you.
People used to say, you're the originator, Lisa. You should tell me how much I qualify for. I said, you can right now in today's market, according to the bank, if you have a pulse, you can actually buy a $500,000 home. That's because that's what we set up as an industry with these stated income loans, these negative loans. We did this to our consumers. We set them up to fail. And I saw that firsthand, and I wasn't going to be a part of that. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes. What I'm saying is I stayed away from it, especially with my consumers that did not know what a mortgage even was spelled out to be. They didn't know what PITI stood for. I sure wasn't going to say, You can do $2,000 a month, right? You can buy a $400,000 house, right? Because $400,000 at a commission would equal a certain amount of money. And that was appealing to originators. This is why a lot of loan officers came into the industry when the refinance boom came in, because they thought they can make money and they took it as a job. And going back to my point, in March of 2001, when they changed that guideline that there was no more yield spreads, I believe almost 10,000 loan officers were no longer loan officers.
Just in your
no, in the state of California.
State of California.
Yeah. I don't know the statistics and I don't have the paperwork up in front of me, but I was very proud of that moment that they decided to take that yield spread out and change that for the banks. And those are just, I don't tell people how much they can afford. I ask them.
Yeah.
You know, if you can make a mortgage payment, where are you comfortable? A lot of people today still say $1,500. In the Inland Empire, that's almost impossible because rent's $1,700.
Right.
At least, you know? And so when people would say, I can afford $1,500, I'm like, okay, so $1,500, 2 + 2 is 4, right? Easy. You have to buy a house at $200,000. Well, there is no house that's for $200,000. Okay, well, there is. There really is. We're just going to have to move. You can't live in Riverside. You can't live in Orange County or Anaheim. You're just going to have to move to Beaumont. Then we go with people complaining about their commute. Well, then you don't want to own a home that bad, because when we owned a home as a family, my grandfather was traveling from Moreno Valley to Long Beach can you imagine the drive at 3 a.m. and then at 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
No, thank you.
He did it. And he did it because he lived below his means, which is where we started with this entire conversation, is that he did not buy above his means. He was responsible. He lived at a 43% debt to income ratio. He did not spend more than what he needed. He didn't meet up to the Joneses. He didn't care.
Yeah. So as we're wrapping up the podcast, what are you excited about as you're moving into this new job at Power of Now?
It's the Power is Now.
Power is Now.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a position that's titled as the Director of Lender Services for the state or for my area. And he wants me to direct and start El Poder es Ahora, and helping the Hispanic community know that the power is now. Meaning, let's get together. Same thing. And you can do this. It doesn't matter where the market's going to go. It's where you need to go to do what you got to do to get in. If buying a house is part of that role, let's do it. But let's make sure you're in the right place. So I'm excited to see that this market's coming up. I've been studying the market. Like I said, I've been analyzing a lot of this. I have some good friends, a specific friend that's an economist. And when I met him last year, I was like all excited. And I said, this is what's going to happen. He goes, what makes you think that? I'm like, this is what I found out. And he goes, you're right. And he's an economist, and he's been doing this his whole life. I mean, I don't know how old, Elliot is, but he was like impressed. He's like, you really have done your homework. I don't have a college degree. Yeah. I have a mommy degree, right? And in that, I had to learn how to reinvent myself. I had to really go invest in educating myself along the way. And keeping my word and remembering everything. So 2019 is exciting because I'm launching off this new project with the Wally Center, having the ability to have families come in, talk about their home and how they can better their home, and how, their children that they're dealing with autism or any type of mental health disorder. Like, I have that available. The Wally Center has that available. So if you have a situation and you don't know what to do with it, but you want to get into a home and you got a child who is in need and you don't know exactly, the Wally Center has therapists and counselors that can help you walk your family through it. They got parenting classes and things like that. Now they have a financial originator, financial advisor, maybe a counselor that can say, this is what I can show you. Yeah. And I'm not so much necessarily looking to get the loans as much as I'm getting that I would call it like, a physical. Yeah. You go to the doctor's office, you just have a physical done and having that service available. So that's one really cool project that I'm working. I'm also working really close with the Fair Housing in the Inland Empire. Fair Housing.
What's it called? Fair Housing?
Fair Housing in the Riverside Inland Empire. The director of Fair Housing, her name is Rose May. She's got a big project going on right now. And I was privileged to meet her recently. Very powerful woman. She's in charge of leading the new Fair Housing going on, a building that they're really trying to make a lot of new changes. Fair housing is in itself, it says what it is.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to raise money to put their new building in. So she's a powerful woman all in herself. I can't wait till you meet her.
Awesome.
So I'm working with them a lot right now. And then now my new project is the new position they just offered me at The Power Is Now. And I'm going to see what I can do.
Yeah.
I think that The Power Is Now because I've spent the last 15, actually it's my 18th year as a loan officer originating home loans.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm going to show people the power.
Mm-hmm.
The power is being strong and not letting people tell you who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I know who I am.
Yeah.
Always known who I am, and good, bad, and indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to show my girls that they don't go based off of what people tell them they are. Because if I went based off of who I was at that lawsuit, I would have been in depression and anxiety, and drinking and any of that kind of stuff would have never helped me. So and luckily I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I teach my daughter, be smarter, be wiser, and don't just let people tell you who you are.
Yeah.
Make yourself through being real and be proud of who you are. So I'm excited that The Power is now, and this year is going to be a good year.
We've been asking every guest on this podcast where they rank on, we're calling it the Powerful Ladies scale, where if 0 is human and Powerful Ladies is a 10, where do you feel you are at today? And where do you feel like you're at on average?
I want to say a 10 because I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to be a 10.
I like that.
Yeah.
Not afraid to be a 10. I wish more people felt that way. So Lisa, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. I think this is an amazing story that there's so many elements people can take away. And for sure, I think perseverance is probably the number one that I'm going to take away from this. But thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
I hope you all enjoyed this episode. It takes a lot of courage to tell your story and especially to share the struggles. Thank you, Lisa, for wanting to share one of the scariest and hardest chapters in your life with the Powerful Ladies audience. I'm left being reminded of how important it is to never give up on believing in yourself and your truth. I'm also reminded of the importance to take responsibility of your financial health. There is a way to chase and live your American dream, regardless of your current financial situation. This is something that's so important to me that we are working on a series of financial literacy courses through Powerful Ladies. I can't wait to share them with you. Make sure that you go and sign up for our newsletter at thepowerfulladies.com. Follow us on Instagram at thepowerfulladies, and check out our YouTube channel where the courses will be coming soon. If you'd like to support the work that we're doing here at Powerful Ladies, there's a couple of ways you can do that. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Leave a review on any of these platforms. Share the show with all the powerful ladies and gentlemen in your life. Join our Patreon account. Check out the website, thepowerfulladies.com, to hear more inspiring stories, get practical tools to be your most powerful, get 15% off your first order in the Powerful Ladies shop, or donate to the Powerful Ladies One Day of Giving campaign. And of course, follow us on Instagram at Powerful Ladies. For show notes and to get the links to the books, podcasts, and people we talk about, go to thepowerfulladies.com. I'd like to thank our producer, composer, and audio engineer, Jordan Duffy. She's one of the first female audio engineers in the podcasting world, if not the first. And she also happens to be the best. We're very lucky to have her. She's a powerful lady in her own right. In addition to taking over the podcasting world, she's a singer-songwriter working on her next album, and she's one of my sisters. So it's amazing to be creating this with her, and I'm so thankful that she finds time in her crazy busy schedule to make this happen. It's a testament to her belief in what we're creating through Powerful Ladies, and I'm honored that she shares my vision. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. I can't wait for you to hear it. Until then, I hope you're taking on being powerful in your life. Go be awesome and up to something you love. Hey guys, did you know that there is a way that you can show Powerful Ladies some real love? You can be a patron of the Powerful Ladies podcast. Go to patreon.com/Powerful Ladies. There are over 6 choices for you to figure out how you would like to support us. From $5 all the way up to unicorn support. Really, that's what it's called. You can be a powerful lady unicorn. Who doesn't want to be that? The great part is, by your contributions, you get more cool free stuff and access to new and exclusive opportunities. Everything from hidden podcast to free merch to free coaching. What? You can be a unicorn and get free coaching or win a trip to LA paid for by us. That sounds amazing. You want a hug, don't you? So go and support Powerful Ladies on Patreon today. Thank you.
I like big books and I cannot lie. What do you want them to do, Kara?
I want them to go and visit thepowerfulladies.com, go to tools, click read, and see all the awesome books that I love, our guests love. You click on that picture, you can buy them. And guess what? Every time you buy a book there, you help support Powerful Ladies.
What?
I know.
What?
Listen, guys, if you love what we're doing, support us. Buy some books on Powerful Ladies. Do it today.
Support yourself. Support yourself and your brain. And buy some books. I should know. I don't read. I should read.
And now Jordan is fired from the Powerful Ladies because this is a literacy promoting organization and we can't have her spreading that nonsense.
I'm gonna read.